Did Elon Musk make the dumbest geopolitical statement ever? This is the tweet. Modern Western civilization has extraordinary empathy compared to its power. This is arguably its greatest weakness. With the nuclear bomb, America could have subjugated every nation on earth with ease. Hitler and Stalin would have certainly done so. Instead, America helped rebuild Germany and Japan. There's no historical precedent for a nation with so much power helping rather than destroying its defeated enemies. So he's getting a lot of flack for this one, and for good reason. But let's look at the tweet he was responding to. He was responding to this one from Joel Shepard, who's an author who was responding to Elon Musk. He was responding to Elon's first tweet, which was, "I favor empathy, but the assumption that empathy will always be reciprocated is false." And Joel wrote, "And there are many parasitical strategies that use a person's empathy against them. Sometimes these develop into entire political ideological movements where the population's empathy becomes an attack vector that the unscrupulous can exploit for gain." So to be clear, and then Elon goes on and says, the United States is the most moral army in the world. Essentially sounds a lot like the IDF. Israel's the most moral army in the world. They take real great care to prevent civilian deaths, as 70% of the deaths in Gaza are women and children. Elon Musk sounds similar to that. Now, Joel Shepard is a big pro-Israel supporter. He's just oftentimes retweeting Gad Saad. He himself is not really Jewish. He's kind of Jewish. He says that his grandfather's name on his father's side was Shapiro, but he changed the family's name to Shepard upon migrating to Australia to better fit in with the Gentiles. And he says his mother was not Jewish. He was not raised Jewish, but he regrets not knowing his Jewish side better. And then he does a hashtag I stand with Israel. So what he's referring to, I bring that up because what he's referring to is obviously Palestine and the support that people have for Palestine. So he's saying there's this parasitical strategy that uses empathy. So the people who empathize with the Palestinians, sometimes these develop into entire political ideological movements. So he's talking about the Free Palestine movement, where the population's empathy becomes an attack vector that the unscrupulous can exploit for gain. So he's saying like, oh, you're siding with the bad people is what he's saying. Your empathy is causing you to side with the bad people. And that is why you're pro Free Palestine. You're pro ensuring people don't live under oppression. And that's when Elon then came back with, well, modern Western civilization has extraordinary empathy compared to power. I mean, look at how great we are, right? This is our greatest weakness. We had nuclear bombs and we could have subjugated all of these countries, but we didn't. So Elon is missing one big major point, which is at the time that the United States had developed the nuclear bomb, which was in 1945, the U.S. at that point didn't realize that the U.S. was a great world military power. It was kind of just starting to dawn on the United States that that's what was going on. It was obviously an emerging military power, but certainly not the dominant force in the world. And shortly after the United States developed the nuclear bomb, and by the way, then immediately dropped it. So we are so humane that 1 month before dropping the bomb on Japan, we tested it for the first time. So in July of 1945, we tested the nukes. And then in August of 1945, dropped them on Japan. That's how humane the United States is once the U.S. gets weapons. So humane. Has weapons, won't use them. We're the only country in the world that's dropped a nuke, and we've done it twice. And then, of course, we had to rebuild that country after that because guess what? Guilt set in, amongst other things. But shortly after the United States developed the nuclear weapon, the Russian Federation gained theirs in 1949. So there wasn't a long period of time for the United States to realize that they were this great world power and then to take advantage of that moment, other than what they'd already done to supposedly end World War II, which is debated whether or not the nukes actually ended World War II or whether or not it was just an inhumane experiment on a group of people who were already surrendering. That's how humane we are. Here's all the countries with the nukes in the world right now. So 1945, the United States gained theirs. 45, the United States. 49, Russia. The United Kingdom gained theirs in 1952. France in 1960, China 1964, then India in 1974. So it wasn't really until about the maybe 60s when the U.S. realized that, oh, wow, we're a world power. We can actually start doing, maybe the 50s, you could maybe make that argument, probably in the 50s, once the CIA was developed, and then which wasn't until the 50s. And then the CIA kind of got these bright ideas of, well, we do have nukes, which, by the way, at that point, Russia had them. So we do have nukes, and we can and we've got some power. We're known as mighty. We've dropped some bombs. We've scared people to death. Now we can actually go around and use that power the very way that Elon Musk says the United States has not used that power, start wielding that power as bullies around the world. So such big bullies that here's the United States list of interventions since World War II. But we are the most moral army in the world, guys. We don't use our power for subjugating the world, do we? This is exactly why that was the dumbest tweet, the dumbest geopolitical take ever. People in the comments are saying, Elon, there's still time to take this down, because this is where it gets really stupid. Look at this. U.S. intervention since World War II. So really started ramping up. You could see in the 60s and the 70s, there was a ton since then. So it really, really ramped up. Once you get into Cuba, 1959, so we had Indonesia in 58. Cuba, really once the CIA got started, that is really when we started ramping up. And, at that point we had nukes. And so we're thinking, hey, we can actually flex our military muscle. And then when we stopped flexing military muscle, which we still do, but we don't do it as much, we started flexing the muscle of the dollar. As soon as we gained control of the world's default currency, what did we do? We didn't act as humanitarians. What was it that Elon said that we were, what did he call us? He says that we're this moral, America helped rebuild Germany and Japan. Oh my gosh, we are so empathetic, and we have these tools, and we could use them to destroy, but we don't. In fact, we've used the dollar as a weapon. We've used our military. We have 800 bases around the world. Once we gained our military might and realized it, we started building bases. Once we realized we could, we couldn't really threaten nukes as much because other countries have nukes. It's a great equalizer. But that's why a lot of people want to build up, for example, the dollar. They want to build up the something to counter the dollar. They want BRICS. And it's because when you create a multipolar world rather than a hegemony, you actually create more balance. We haven't seen a nuke used since it was used in Japan because we were the only country who had a nuke, so we felt safe dropping it. But as soon as other countries gained nukes, we haven't dropped any bombs, and neither has anybody else. So there's something to be said about it being an equalizer. At the same time, you've got the dollar, which is dominant, but if these other countries and we use it to sanction the hell out of everybody, and if these other countries get together and they're able to actually counter the dominance of the dollar, we might live in a better, more just world, just like we do without as many nukes there haven't been any nukes dropped. Maybe then people will stop using sanctions because they'll realize that all it does is hurt them. Just like what it's done in Russia, the sanctioning, the blockades on Russia and Russian goods, and telling these Western companies that they need to get out of Russia. All that did was just a total boon for the Russian economy when all these Russian business owners said, "Oh, great, an American business up for sale. I'll buy it. I'll operate it here in Russia if the Americans don't want to, or if the Germans don't want to, or if the British don't want to, or whatever." So it's just a boon to their economy. But anyway, I mean, Elon Musk and his. I get it. There's so many of us. It's not just Elon. There's so many of us who just really want to believe that we're the good guys. There's a lot of us that just want to believe that the United States did not lose its way, that we're still the good old boys that are going around the world saving it. And that's what so many people believe, and that's what they gobble up, which is why they're willing to back so many wars, because the narrative is, oh, we're saving people from communism, and then we're saving people from dictators, and then it's now we're saving people from a lack of democracy. We must ensure that we have democracy around the world and freedom for people. I mean, that's the whole justification for supporting Israel. It's the only democracy in the Middle East, so we must support it, even though Netanyahu's been in power since 1990, on and off, and is a complete tyrant. But whatever, don't you mind that. It's a democracy. So yes, our empathy is our greatest weakness, but it's our not as the establishment. The establishment uses it as a tool. The empathy of the American people is our greatest weakness because the establishment and the elites use it against us in order to talk us into war after war after war, in order to make us believe. I mean, they've gaslit us into believing that dropping 2 nukes on Japan was a good thing. They've gaslit us into believing that, well, it ended World War II. Stopped World War II. That's what it did. So it was a good thing after all, even though historians say that's not true. The war was already ending. We just dropped the nukes because we had them. And we thought, wow, this is a great way to flex military might and show the world what we've got so that they fear us. It wasn't out of humanitarianism that we dropped nukes on people, on innocent civilians. And we dropped nukes because we wanted to flex our military might. But I get it. A lot of people want to believe the United States is still good. The United States is still honorable and moral. And we are the most moral military in the world, except for the IDF.